What's up, everybody? Welcome back to part 6 of my Amanda Knox book review, Waiting to be Heard. You can pick it up on Amazon, at bookstores. Follow her on Twitter, Instagram. She has a tremendous podcast and Patreon account as well. Give her a follow on Patreon. Everything Amanda Knox is listed in the description below. So go give her a follow on all the platforms. Support the author. She is a tremendous Twitter follow. She posts a lot of very interesting things. You will not be disappointed. So here we go. We're going to jump right into part 6. This is June and September 2008. Amanda talks about how she received a letter from her boyfriend at the time while they were both still in prison, and he stated how difficult his interrogation was and apologized for saying the things he said about her, and that he still cared about her and thinks about her all the time. Now, he was clearly put under the same type of pressure that she was, being told that she probably turned on him, and if he agrees to do all of this stuff, that his time in prison, or maybe even that he would be let go, that all of this stuff would be easier for him if he would just say that Amanda was involved. Amanda talks about the evidence against Rudy Gaudet, and it all pointed towards his guilt. His DNA was all over Meredith's room, all over her body, on her clothing, her purse, his handprint in blood on her pillowcase, and of course, he left the country. Amanda's defense team and their DNA expert noted that the prosecution's DNA expert hadn't provided enough information about their investigation for Amanda's defense team to be able to critique her results. So Amanda's defense team challenged this, and the court and the judge granted the request for an independent review. And the person that did the independent review was the boss of the prosecution's DNA expert. That's not fishy at all. So of course he said everything was done perfectly. How is that independent at all when it's the boss of the person that had already done it? It should be someone that is not involved with the case already at all. You're hiring somebody from the same place that's already doing it. Absolutely bonkers. That's the opposite of independent. Another one of the witnesses the prosecution called that said some of the things about Amanda said he knew it was Amanda because he met her uncle once when Raffaele and her were walking down the street in Italy in August. Now, this claim is 100% false because Amanda wasn't even in Italy in August. She didn't know Raffaele yet, and also didn't have an uncle in Italy at all. How do people get away with openly lying in court? It's absolutely bonkers. Amanda talks about how on October 28th, 2008, Rudy received a sentence of 30 years for sexual assault and the murder of Meredith. He, of course, did not serve 30 years. He's out now. He got out real recently as well. It was just a couple of months ago. So it was 2008 to 2021. Would have been 13 years, give or take a few months. The actual trial, of course, is very different than the pre-trial. Amanda's lawyers explained to her that in the full trial, both sides get to call witnesses. In the pre-trial, only the prosecution gets to call witnesses, which makes absolutely no sense. How are you supposed to defend yourself when you can't call your own witnesses to prove that you didn't do it? It's set up to be so one-sided. It makes no sense. Amanda talks about how in Italy, now this is crazy to me. Civil and criminal trials are held at the same time, which is different than the United States. They are held separately, of course. Easiest example would be the O.J. Simpson trial. O.J. Simpson was charged criminally, found not guilty, and then he was charged civilly and was found to be civilly responsible for the crime. So two completely different trials, two completely different setups, two completely different things. In Italy, they're done at the exact same time. Jurors in Italy are not screened for bias or knowing information already from the outside like they are in the United States. In the United States, they are told not to read newspapers, not to watch the news, not to talk to each other about it. In Italy, they're not told any of that. Now, here's an example of how difficult it would be to present a criminal trial and a civil trial at the same time. Amanda's confession, where she mistakenly described Patrick as the murderer, wasn't allowed to be introduced in the criminal case, but it was allowed to be introduced in the civil case, which in the United States would be fine because they're two separate trials. But in Italy, it's the same people hearing the information anyway. So even though it wasn't allowed in the criminal trial, the same set of jurors are going to hear this letter, are going to hear this confession anyway, and they're supposed to be able to keep it separate. Like, here's criminal trial, here's civil trial. This piece of information isn't allowed over here, but it's allowed over here. Like, they're expected to be able to keep everything separately. Like, that's just not gonna happen. Also in Italy, the verdict does not have to be unanimous like it is in the United States. In Italy, what is required is a majority decision in the case, the maximum sentence supported by at least 5 jurors. In the Amanda Knox case in the United States, if there are 8 jurors or 12 jurors or whatever, it has to be unanimous. It can't be 10-2 or 8-4. In the United States, it has to be 12-0 or 8-0. It has to be unanimous. In Italy, just has to be a majority. The defense talked about how people investigating the crime scene didn't change their gloves, so that was an easy way to get DNA from one place to another. Amanda talks about how when Rudy Gaudet was called to testify in the trial, he stated, "I reserve the right not to respond," which in America is the same thing as taking the Fifth Amendment. The only reason back then, and the only reason still to this day, that some people question the innocence of Amanda Knox was because of how the media portrayed her, repeatedly reporting lies, repeatedly printing stories that were made up. You can go to the supermarket to this day and read headlines of the National Enquirer and know that they are absolutely ridiculous and untrue. But if they are reported in a reputable newspaper, there's probably people out there that are going to believe it. Public perception of Amanda Knox from back then came from 100% false stories that were being shared throughout the media. I can't imagine what it would have been like today with social media existing, but back then there was no social media, especially nowhere near like it is the monster it is today. It would have been 100 times worse, or maybe it would have been better. Maybe she would have been able to get her story out there, but man, with the way the media is today, this would have been plastered everywhere 1,000,000 times more than it was even back then, and I can't even imagine what it would have been like. I would like to think it would have been easier for people to see through the media's lies, and maybe Amanda wouldn't have had to serve any of the time that she did, but whew, it would be crazy. Now, allegedly, a lot of these lies were probably fed to the media, allegedly by the prosecution, to fit their narrative to get the result they wanted. I mean, they had a homeless guy testify, and you're trying to tell me you can't promise a homeless guy a piece of pizza and a soda, and he's going to do whatever it was that the prosecution wanted him to do? Come on. Amanda talks about how Patrick's lawyer called her an angel's face with a demon's soul. No matter how you look at it, that's a heck of a headline. Amanda talks about how in early September of 2009, they discovered that there was no blood on the knife and there was so little DNA present they didn't have enough to get valid results. They thought at the time they had everything they needed to overturn the case. But the judge, of course, decided to continue with the trial anyway, stating, "We'll hear from both sides." If the defense team had this information from the beginning, the strategy could have been very different. There would have been no reason to even charge Amanda or Raffaele with the murder. The murder weapon they had, that they claimed allegedly did the crime, came from Raffaele's apartment. But now it was proved that this wasn't the case, so they were charged incorrectly, but yet the judge was still going to proceed anyway. The prosecution thought that because both Amanda's and Meredith's DNA was found in the hallway outside the living room, that Amanda was connected to the murder. This prosecution expert is terrible. Of course her DNA is going to be found in the house. She lives there. Insane. The prosecution had absolutely no evidence against Amanda or Raffaele, and they were even withholding information that could have pointed towards their innocence. But the detectives and the police were more concerned with being proved not wrong than they were with getting the correct outcome. Amanda talks about how when they first went through the crime scene, they found Meredith's bra fastener under the bloody cushion underneath Meredith's body, cut off from the rest of her bra. But they failed to take that. They forgot about it and left it behind. It wasn't until 6 weeks later when they went back and they spotted the bra clasp again. Only this time it wasn't even in the same place where they found it originally. They found it this time lying beneath a rolled up carpet and sock. Clearly it could have been contaminated because people doing the search also didn't change their gloves. If they picked up something with Amanda's DNA on it and then picked up something wearing the same gloves that belonged to Meredith's or Raffaele or anybody's, Amanda's DNA is going to be on that item, and vice versa. Everything. Gloves need to be changed when touching every piece of evidence. It's just lazy police work and lazy investigating. The prosecution's theory is that Raffaele and Amanda cleaned up their DNA, leaving only Rudy's DNA. How ridiculous of a statement is that? How could they possibly know that they're only cleaning up their own DNA and leaving Rudy's DNA behind? Such a stupid thing. Like, this whole thing is stupid. And that's where I'm going to end part 6 of my Amanda Knox book review. Just absolutely crazy. Everything Amanda Knox is listed in the description below. Go check it out, give her a follow, subscribe to her Patreon account. She is a tremendous follow. Pick up the book, support the author. Man, this case is insane. But the police just didn't want to be wrong. They didn't want to be wrong, so they took years away from Amanda Knox and her boyfriend at the time. And they had the correct guy in prison, but they still wanted Amanda and her boyfriend. Just bonkers, just crazy. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with part 7, and hope you all have a great day. I'll see you again soon.